I always believed family was safe. "This is my wife," I'd tell friends. "The woman I built my life with." She'd squeeze my hand and say, "We're a team, always." When her younger sister, Sana, arrived with a suitcase and red eyes, she murmured, "I've got nowhere else." My wife said, "Let her stay, please." I answered, "Of course, she's family." At dinner, Sana kept her voice small. "Thank you for the room." I said, "Don't mention it." My wife asked, "Are you okay?" Sana nodded fast. "I'm fine." Then she looked at me and whispered, "You're kind." I laughed it off. "I'm just doing what anyone would." Later, when my wife went to shower, Sana lingered by the sink. "Can you help me open this jar?" she asked, stepping closer than needed. "Sure," I said, twisting the lid. Her fingers brushed mine. "Sorry," she giggled. I told myself. She's nervous, she's healing. That night I shut off the lights. From the hallway, a soft voice slid into the dark. "Amir." My stomach dropped. I didn't answer. I just listened, heart pounding, because something in that whisper felt like a door opening the wrong way. And I hated that feeling. I came home early and stopped at the hallway. Voices drifted from the living room. I knew Sana's voice. My wife said nothing. Sana whispered, "I tried to fight it, but I love you." My breath caught. She said, "You deserve someone who understands you." I waited for my wife to stop her. Seconds dragged like hours. Sana continued, "I can give you what she can't." Still silence. My chest burned. Finally, my wife spoke. "This is wrong. I don't know what to do." Those words cut deeper than a scream. I stepped out and said, "What is going on here?" They both jumped. Sana cried instantly. "He misunderstood," she said. "I was just talking." I laughed, shaking. Talking about replacing my wife? My wife whispered, "I was confused." I asked, "Confused about us?" Sana grabbed my arm. "I didn't mean it like that." I pulled away. "Don't touch me." My hands trembled. I saw the truth clearly then. This didn't begin tonight. It grew quietly. Every ignored stare, every late whisper, every moment I chose trust over fear. Standing there, I realized my home was no longer safe, and the man I was before that night was already gone, forever changed. I closed the bedroom door and said, "How long has this been happening?" My wife sat on the bed and whispered, "I never touched him." I asked, "Then why didn't you stop her?" She cried, "I didn't know how." That answer hurt, more than a lie. I said, "Trust doesn't break in one night, it leaks." She said, "I was scared to upset my sister." I replied, "You already upset me." Silence filled the room. Later, Sana told relatives, "He misunderstood everything." Phones started ringing. My aunt asked, "Why are you being harsh?" I said, "I'm protecting my marriage." "Night," my wife asked. "Can we fix this?" I said, "I want to," but my chest felt heavy. I lay awake, replaying words, pauses, looks. "Did I fail you?" I asked myself. My wife whispered, "Please don't give up." I stared at the ceiling and said nothing. Sana walked past our door and said softly, "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." I realized poison doesn't shout. It smiles. In that quiet moment, I made a decision. I will not ignore disrespect again, even if it wears the face of family. Tonight I choose myself, my dignity, and the marriage I still hope survives. I sat across from my wife and said, "I won't shout anymore." She asked, "Then what do you want?" I replied, "I need you to choose." She froze. "Choose what?" I said, "Our marriage or protecting your sister." She whispered, "That's unfair." I said, "What's unfair is fighting alone." She broke down. She played on my guilt, my wife cried. She made me feel responsible. I nodded and said, I felt invisible. She grabbed my hand. I choose us. I answered, then we set boundaries. We called Sana in. I said, you need to leave. She laughed. You led me on. I felt sick. That's a lie, I said. She screamed, you'll regret this. I stood still. Pack your things. She crossed her arms. I'm not going anywhere. In that moment, control returned to me. I understood love without respect is empty. My wife whispered, I'm scared. I said, so am I, but silence kills us. She nodded and said, I won't protect lies again. Hearing that promise steadied me, even as the house felt heavier. I breathed and prepared for whatever came next. Sana smiled coldly and said, this isn't over. My phone buzzed nonstop. Have you seen this? My cousin asked. I said, seen what? She sent screenshots, Sana's messages, her voice notes, dates and times. I showed my wife. She whispered, I didn't know it was this bad. I said, now you do. Relatives went quiet. The same aunt who blamed me stopped calling. My brother texted, I'm sorry. I replied, truth speaks louder than me. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I let the evidence breathe. My wife sat beside me and said, I feel ashamed. I answered, I feel tired. She cried, I should have protected us. I nodded. I know. Trust was cracked, not gone, but honesty finally stood between us. Sana called and shouted, you ruined me. I said, I did nothing. She screamed, you planned this. I hung up. No shouting, no revenge, just silence. Later, my wife asked, how are you so calm? I said, because bitterness won't heal me. I felt stronger, not because I won, but because I stayed honest. The power shifted quietly. Karma didn't rush. It walked in slowly, knocked once, and let truth open the door for me. I carried the suitcase to the door and said, it's time. Sana grabbed my arm. Please don't do this. I replied, I already did. She cried, I have nowhere to go. I said, that's not my problem anymore. She snapped, you destroyed my life. I answered calmly, you tried to steal mine. She fell to her knees. I was confused. I said, you were calculated. My wife stood behind me and whispered, enough. Sana looked at her and shouted, you chose him over blood. My wife said, I chose respect. I zipped the bag and placed it outside. Sana hissed, you'll regret this. I looked her in the eyes and said, crossing some lines has no return. She screamed, you led me on. I shook my head. I gave you shelter, not permission. When the door closed, silence filled the house. My wife asked, are we okay? I breathed and said, we're honest. The space felt empty but clean. I didn't feel cruel. I felt free. Boundaries saved what love still could. I said, this house is ours again. My wife nodded. We will rebuild slowly. I replied, with truth. She answered, with courage. I held her hand and whispered, no more fear. Tonight we choose peace over chaos together. I stood in the quiet living room and said, we're still here. My wife nodded. We're hurt, but we're honest. I replied, honesty is new for us. She asked, do you regret staying? I said, I regret staying silent. Some nights she says, I'm scared you'll leave. I answer, I'm scared too, but I'm not running. We talk more now. She admits, I failed you. I tell her, I failed myself first. That truth hurts, but it heals. I learned silence protects lies. I learned love needs courage, not comfort. My wife asked, can we really rebuild? I said, only if we keep choosing respect. She squeezed my hand. I choose you. I replied, I choose myself too. Being alone doesn't scare me anymore. Losing dignity does. That difference changed me. I walk through my home and feel calm. No whispers, no shadows, just space to breathe. I told my wife, anyone who disrespects us is gone. She said, even family? I answered, especially family. I looked around and felt peace settle in my chest. This house survived. Damage, but I survived more. I didn't just save my marriage, I saved myself. Tomorrow will test us again, but tonight proves survival is possible when truth leads, fear fades, and self-respect stands unbroken. I finally trust my strength completely. Now,